Welcome everyone to Dementia Carers Count Lunch and Listen this Thursday. I'm Sue Hines and I'm Head of Services, and I'm really keen to do this session actually because this Lunch and Listen is going to be about visual tools, which is really close to my heart. I'm a speech and language therapist by background, and all the work that I've done with people with dementia and their carers has really utilised visual tools to support somebody who has dementia. And I'm so pleased to be joined today by Gina Smith, who is the founder of Create Visual Aids. Hello, Gina. Thank you for giving up some of your time today to be with us. I just wondered if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself and Create Visual Aids.
Of course. Hi, Sue. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. Yes, my name is Gina, and I used to be a teacher. And when I was a teacher, I would use visual aids to support children at school, to help them understand what was happening in the day and to allow them to communicate with me if they needed to. And it became clear to me that children had access to these visuals at school, but might not have access to them at home. So what I did was I developed a range of visual symbols to help people communicate. But we didn't just make them with children in mind, we've made these visuals for anybody who struggles to communicate. So I used an amazing artist called Jill, who helped me design lots of little pictures that are age neutral, gender neutral, so they can apply to anybody. But what they do is they allow someone to know what's happening in their day. And off the back of that, we've developed lots and lots of visual resources based around these visual symbols.
Thanks, Gina. That's great. And what we're going to do hopefully through this session, isn't it, is show some ways you can use the visual aids, whether it's through storytelling or through timetables and so on. And we'll get to see a few of them as we go through, which is really nice. If anybody listening to this has any questions, please do put them in the chat, either questions or comments. Please put them in the chat and we will try to bring those into the conversation. Sometimes it's not easy to spot them straight away, and some questions I might hold on for a little while just so that it all flows nicely, but we'd love to hear from you, love to hear, as I say, questions and comments. Some people don't want to put it in the comments box, and we know that that's fine. If you want to ask us something anonymously, you want us to talk about it, but you don't want to put in the chat box, then that's fine. Send us a private message anonymously and we can interweave that in as well. Anything that we don't get to during this time, because 30 minutes does go very quickly, Gina and I will take a look at after this session, and someone from Dementia Carers Count will be able to come back to you if there's anything that we haven't covered during this session. So Gina, one of the things I said, certainly within my work with speech and language therapy, working to support somebody with dementia, we know that verbal communication can become tricky. People can have difficulty in processing in what they hear or being able to find the words to express what they want to say. And we often have to adapt our own communication to support the person with dementia. There's lots of techniques that we can do with that, and we do have sessions around that within our virtual carers centre and our live online sessions. But I wondered if you'd like to start just by giving our viewers a bit of an overview of why specifically visual tools can be used for someone with dementia.
Okay, of course. First of all, I'll explain why we need to support communication in general for someone with dementia. And that is, if you don't know what's happening in your day, so we all like to feel in control, don't we? And if you've got no idea what's happening in your day because you don't understand, because you don't remember, because somebody's told you but you can't remember, you start to feel really, really anxious, really nervous. You get quite stressed. We all do. I know I do if I don't know what's happening. Likewise, if you really, really need to communicate with somebody else, but you're not able to for whatever reason, if you don't have the words, for whatever reason, if you can't communicate with somebody else, you start to feel very, very, very frustrated. And when we're frustrated, when we're stressed, our behaviour changes, we become irritable. All our behaviour can change in many ways. So we need to help somebody find a way to communicate, both to understand what's happening and to communicate with us. The reason in particular that pictures work really, really well for that, there's lots of reasons that I could talk about all night why pictures are really good for that. One reason is that pictures don't disappear. So if somebody tells you a big list of what's happening in their day, if you're struggling to process that language, you might forget, or you might be so busy focusing on the first thing that the person said that you can't remember what came next. If you've got pictures, they're not going anywhere, they're just there. They stay there for as long as you need to just look at them and take in that bit of information. Another reason that pictures work really, really well, the picture and a word, is that it's got no tone of voice. So if I said to you, get dressed, and then a few minutes later I say to you, get dressed, then first of all, you might take that the wrong way, that somebody's annoyed with you, or you might take it as completely different instruction. Then start your processing again. Whilst if we've just got a picture, there's no tone of voice, there's no confusion. We've just got a picture and a word. It says what we need to say.
That's brilliant. And I think that's key. What you were saying is that it gives a consistent message. It gives a message that stays for people to latch onto. And also, in my experience, visual cues are key for somebody with dementia. One of the things that we often say to people is make sure they can see something before you tell them, and before even you go to touch them, maybe to help them to get dressed or something like that. And I think those visual cues, such as pictures, can really help in that process, can't they? Of allowing someone to see something before perhaps you do add that verbal context or some sort of physical context to prompt them as well. And I think the other thing you said that was key is that they're really useful to reduce that anxiety, to know what's happening, what's going to come next. And if you forget what's coming next, you can go back and you can look at it again. Exactly. And it almost empowers somebody as well to be able to self-manage a situation, particularly earlier on in dementia. The person isn't relying on constantly asking somebody else, well, so what were we going to do next, or what was going to happen this afternoon?
Exactly that. You're giving someone independence.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just wondering if you could show us a couple of examples and explain how some of this might work on a day-to-day basis, particularly say in a timetable or a story abroad about what something's going to happen in the future.
So this is, you can see this is an example of a visual timetable. So what this is doing is it's lots of pictures that show somebody what's happening next. So we've got lunch, car, shopping, appointment, home. We've got visuals for everything. So you can put on whatever you want. And these are just Velcroed on. So you can just move them around as you need to. And what you can do is you can pop that on the wall so that somebody can see what's happening. And like you said, Sue, if they've forgotten, they can't remember, this isn't going anywhere. It's there so that they can see it. Other ways that you might have visuals is you might have them on a lanyard around your neck, you might have them on a key ring, you might have them visuals up around the house, labeling different parts of the kitchen, for example, reminding somebody where things are. That's great for showing somebody what's happening. But likewise, what you can do is, if somebody needs to communicate with you, is you could give them a tool. For example, this is part of our communication book, and it says I want, and then somebody could stick on I want to see family, or I want to go to the cafe, things like that. Just to note, in case any of our viewers are wondering why it says I want, it sounds a bit abrupt, and that is because if somebody's struggling with communication, we're not going to worry about niceties like please can I have. If they need something, then we want to give them a way to communicate that to us. And so here's something where somebody can put on what they need and they can hand it to you. They've got a way of communicating, which is then going to make, like we said, make them feel much, much better because they're heard, they're understood. You're basically giving them a voice.
Great. And Gina, if you go back to the first one that you had, which was the one, that's it, the timetable one, and what you showed on both of them is they've got Velcro on them. But what I like about this as well is, as you were speaking and I was thinking about it, Gina, is that as you move through that day, you might want to take them off the board, and then the person knows exactly where they are. And sometimes if you ask somebody to remove it themselves and take it away, then that can help them in their recall and cement it as in their memory that that's actually happened.
Exactly that. So especially, I know with mealtimes, or saying taking medication, for example, like you say, they could have medication and when they've done it, they can take it off. Quite often people have a pot or a bag at the bottom to say something is done, so that they know which ones they've done and which ones they haven't.
Yeah, and that can also reduce that anxiety because it's reassuring. If I've put it in that box, it means that it's been done and I can tick that off my list.
So they're not doubting themselves.
Yeah, I think The visuals that you've got there are fantastic, and I'm going to ask you to give us a little bit of information about those in a minute and why they've been chosen as they are. But just for viewers as well, sometimes often what I've said to often, that's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? But sometimes what I've said to people is perhaps supplement it by photos of the people and the places that you regularly visit, and make your own little ones that could fit onto the storyboard as well, with the Velcro on the back. Because if it's a very familiar GP surgery or a family member or a place that like a day centre or something that somebody is regularly visiting, that can really help as well, because there's a connection in terms of a visual memory storage of the place that they used to go to. But these are really effective as well, aren't they, Gina? The ones that you've produced.
Yeah, they're effective because they're generic. We want them to apply to as many people as possible. So when we designed the little, if I put this one for example, we designed these people purposely to, like I said, to be gender neutral and age neutral, and also what we can do is we can change the skin color. So we wanted them to apply to anybody, so they weren't just for adults or just for children, that anybody could use them. But going back to what you just said then, Sue, I do encourage people to send in photos if they are for someone specific, because we could design a photo of mum, but it's never, we could design a visual symbol of mum or auntie or whoever, but it's never going to be as effective as actually having the photo of the person. And what some people do when they're using visuals is they might put the person next to what's happening, so that which reassures somebody, you know, even more, I'm going for an appointment with, and have a photo next to it.
Yeah, okay. One of the things people, an anonymous person has said is, are there any particular colours that work? Now, from my perspective, one more thing we know about dementia is contrasting colours are really important. So that we have bright colours that contrast with their backgrounds. And I noticed on your board, you know, you had a really clear blue car against a background. It's making it very clear for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just developing a whole range of, we're developing new products all the time, but we just launched a visual timetable for adults. And we've actually got it in two options. We've got it with this green background, but we've also made it with a red board as well, because you, Sue, taught me that actually that's a really, really strong colour, and that's really effective for people with dementia.
Yeah, so a couple of things on this. Joy has asked where we can get these pictures from, and we're going to put the link in to your website, and I am going to mention some others in a little bit, some other sort of resources out there. There's one particularly called Talking Maths, which was developed some time ago, and Talking Maths is a really effective tool with symbols and pictures and visual cues, which supports conversations and for somebody to be able to express feelings and views about a particular topic, how they feel about something, whether they like to have a bath or a shower, where they like to go. And that's just another tool. So we can put a link to Talking Maths in there as well as a link to yours. But I think even with yours on that expressing feelings, that just when someone sees a picture, you get an idea about whether somebody likes something or dislikes something. Again, your picture of the car, you'd get a sense of whether someone wants to get in a car or doesn't want to get in a car, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And what we try and do is, if people need it, is we can make them as relevant as possible. So we can make the car red, or, you know, we can change things like that and change the wording, so because it needs to be right for the individual. And also going on to what you're saying there about finding out people's opinions on things, something that we're working on at the moment is developing a conversation chart, so that instead of it being this is what we're doing today, so that somebody has the tools to talk about what has happened today. So we're working on a chart that says, I went, I saw, I ate, so that somebody, if they're not able to tell someone at the end of the day what they've done, they can show someone through pictures, so that they can start that conversation, instead of just knowing something brilliant happened today or something awful happened today, but I can't tell you about it.
And I'm going to come back to that in 1 second, because I've got some thoughts on that as well, Gina, that I wanted to talk to you about. But someone anonymous here says they've asked a daft question, and they certainly haven't asked a daft question, because I'm sure people are thinking, well, how can I create this myself? I can't draw for toffee.
Neither can I. I've got an artist, I can't draw.
No, So the one is using your phone and taking some photos and then creating them out of that. Another one is to get in touch with someone like Gina, who is able to supply some of these tools. Another way is to get another family member involved as well. So often I've had somebody whose grandchildren who isn't quite confident to go and visit grandma or grandpa or doesn't know how they can help. Actually, for them to have that opportunity to do something that is really constructive and that they've done for their grandparent, and actually then they're also often accepted by the grandparent really well because they've been done by their grandchild. So other family members that may well be able to get involved, or somebody that you know might just feel that's something they can do, particularly even a friend. Sometimes friends find it really difficult to visit because they don't know what to talk about.
Yeah.
Particularly with someone who's got a communication problem, and here we're talking about people who usually have some sort of memory or communication problem. So it's something nice to get other people proactively involved in.
Yeah,
and then Helen has just said Velcro. What a brilliant idea.
Velcro is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And you can get sticky back Velcro, isn't it? You know, we traditionally think Velcro is sewn onto something, but this is sticky backed Velcro, isn't it?
Yeah, we've just stuck these coins straight on. So we buy it in coins and in strips, and we just stick it straight on.
So if anyone does find any difficulty sourcing where to get that, then let us know.
We have actually, sorry, this isn't a plug, but we actually have got Velcro on the website as well. So, you know, we can provide that as well if people need it.
Okay, great. The one thing that I said we were going to come back with is the storyboards that happen after events. And I know that if I think back to the work that Talking Mats have done, I know they did some research in the past about how effective Talking Mats were with people with dementia. And people with dementia were able to actively engage in the Talking Mats to really give important information across, the same as you and I were talking, Gina, about somebody being able to take a prompt off the board and put it into a box when it's done. But that might not be the case for somebody who has much more advanced cognitive difficulty and communication difficulties. So sometimes I've been asked, well, so what's the point then? And one of the things I notice is what you were saying about storyboards, about what's happened before. Yeah. It's a launch pad for a conversation. So you or I could pick up that and say, oh, I see you went to see so-and-so at the supermarket or something. And it avoids that test question. And I don't know if you had this in schools, but certainly we find with an adult population, if you're asked a test question all the time, what did you do today? What did you have to eat? Where did you go? Who did you see? Who did you talk to? If you've got a memory problem, that's absolutely exhausting. It you know, and it's challenging. Yeah. And then you get that anxiety and you get that stress. And I wondered if you had any thoughts around that.
I see this with my children when they come out of school. I can't ask them, what did you do today? I'll get nothing. But if I wait till they're relaxed and they're chatting later about their day, then they'll start to open up about what's happened. I think you're absolutely right. Let's avoid the test questions and let's give a way in. And if you're giving somebody a way to communicate what has happened in their day, then you're empowering them. Especially if they haven't had that tool before, they haven't had that tool recently, they've lost their ability to share what they've done, then if you can, like you say, keep it in a relaxed way, so it's not on the spot, but it's a conversation starter, then gradually someone will become more and more advanced at saying what they want to say in a different way, because there's this term AAC, which stands for augmentative and alternative communication, and that's what visuals are. They are an alternative view of alternative way of communicating.
Yeah. And sometimes when you give that alternative way of communicating, the person will relax and then the words come more easily. I'm sure all the viewers have had that moment where they can't find the words they want to say, or they can't quite recall what they had to do. Maybe they've walked up the stairs and can't recall what it was they needed to do at the top of the stairs. And so you go back down the stairs, or you start thinking about something else, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you go, I know what that word was, or I know what it was that I needed when I'd gone upstairs earlier. Yeah. And that's because you've relaxed. And those pictures and that visual aids, as you say, can give that sort of sense of relaxation for that as well.
It's just a different way in. It's just a different way of doing it.
So you showed us one of the strips that you've got, and you showed us the book. You mentioned something about lanyards earlier.
So what you can do is that very simply, you can take any visuals that you've got and you can just hole punch corner and carry them around on a lanyard, and that's really good at communicating to someone just one thing at a time, to just show them this is what we're doing next. But likewise, also it's great for giving someone a choice. So if you want to ask them what it is that they want or they need, and they haven't got the words, then you can show them some choices on your lanyard. So it's just another way. And when we develop our resources, quite often somebody will come to me and say, what products have you got for dementia and for this and for, it's actually all the same product, whether it's for a child, whether it's for someone who's had a stroke, whether it's for someone with dementia. It's either a board or a book or a keyring or a lanyard with whatever visuals you need. And that can include photos. That can include anything at all. There's not one resource for one particular need. It's just visuals in basically making them accessible in whatever way works for you and the person you're communicating with.
And I think the lanyard or a keyring, because the lanyard tends to go in the next, but you can have key rings as well, aren't you? Don't just make them accessible, but they make them portable.
Yeah,
I think, it might be it's latched onto a handbag or something.
Yeah.
So, somebody here has put a comment that her mum lives alone and often forgets to take her medication. She's tried calling her at set times during the day, but she gets confused. She's tried creating a storyboard, but she often forgets to look at it. And this is sometimes where the more mobile ones that can move around, that people can keep in something they keep with them, can help with that, can't it?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we made the book A5, so that the book that we've got that people use to communicate, we purposely made it smaller so people can pop it in their handbag. Because the thing is, visuals are not just for at home, visuals are for everywhere and anywhere. And actually, somebody's actually probably more likely to need to communicate when they're out somewhere different and everything's a bit unknown. So yes, if someone's dependent on visuals, you need to have them with you all the time. And also, not just when things are going really, really smoothly, because you never know when somebody's going to need to communicate. So if they work for someone, then try to have them with you. I know that's a big ask, but if you can, try and have them with you, even if it's just a simple I need help visual, so that somebody can communicate with somebody else.
Okay, I love this comment that's been put in there from an anonymous person. It says, I love this. I can use this for my dad with ADHD and my dad with vascular dementia at the same time. And what a fantastic idea. It gives that space for two people to communicate together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So can I ask you then, I know that a lot of people with dementia struggle with memory. If this is on the wall and somebody's going back to it all the time to remember what's happening, how do we encourage somebody to keep looking if they forget to check the chart itself?
I think that's a challenge that I hear a lot of carers talk about, and even people, and people with dementia will say, well, I've got this board, I've got it in the kitchen, but then I forget that I need to go back and look at it. And that's where these transportable ones and the ones that are with people are really useful, because it can go with the person.
Yeah.
But it may be that it doesn't act as memory aid, but what it might do at later stages is still give that reassurance. You talked at the very beginning about the anxiety and worrying. It can still do that if somebody's there to lead to the board. So say a carer comes in the morning and they're going to be doing X, Y, and Z with the person to support them through daily activities in the morning. They can go to the storyboard together and say, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. So it's not just as a personal prompt for someone to have independence, which might happen for some people with cognitive change, but if the cognitive changes are greater, it still is that planning and that retrospective look at what's gone on in the day for people elsewhere. But you've got some lovely resources that do transport with people. I've before now even used, the footwell mats that you get in the back of the car. They're perfectly sized for the little tables that you have by the side of your chair, or some people have their drinks on. The little footwell mats from the back of the car, they've got Velcro on them. You only need the other side of the Velcro. And then you can that mat can transport around them, which can help. And the other thing that can help is what you said about you talked about the red rim or having something that was brightly coloured, and someone else mentioned the colour yellow, but strong colours help people to prompt to look at them. Does that answer?
It does. It does. It certainly makes a team effort, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've only got a 5 minutes left. I know we haven't caught up about environmental pictures that can cue people into where the bathroom is, what's inside kitchen cupboards. And I do wonder, it'd be lovely to invite you back, Gina, and us to have another conversation about how visual aids can be used to allow people to navigate, well, what's behind that door in the kitchen? What's behind that drawer? Where are my socks? And so on. So it'd be really nice to be able to invite you back to go through some of those things, because we've touched on timetables and storyboards. We haven't really looked at that, expressing feelings and views on a particular choice or on the environment as well.
There's so much we could talk about. Yeah, I'd love to come back. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, there's I'm just seeing what other questions are coming in. So Anna has said, my husband gets word fixed, i.e. the water of the water. How can I help with that? Anna, I think that's probably one, if we can, we'll pick up another time separately from this meeting. It'd be quite a good idea if you could email in to us, and either me or one of the other speech and language therapists can pick up on that one as well. And then Joy has asked, Gina, do you make them a little larger? My mother-in-law has a macular hole in her eye and does not see too well.
Yeah, we can make them any size, and we have made them any size. Yeah, absolutely not a problem. It's really important that we make them right for the individual. So just drop me a message and we can sort that out.
And I think another thing on that for me is that we know that, so Joy has talked about a degenerative eye condition, or an eye condition that isn't necessarily related to dementia, but we also have lots of visual field changes that happen for somebody who does have dementia. And one of those, just for viewers to be aware, is often the sort of peripheral view that somebody sees. So what you can see from the side does reduce when you have a dementia. So your sort of field of vision starts to come in and in. So these visual cues, it goes a little bit back to what you were saying before, Gina, about if it's on a board, how does someone see it? Well, if it's not in your visual field, you're not going to see it. So if somebody is seated and they have one of these boards, such as the one Gina showed you, the small one, it's really important those don't just get to the left to the side of the person, because they may not see it there. It's important that we know that it's in front of them and they are able to pick it up in their visual cue. Another practicality, I think, Gina, you've certainly probably found in your work across all ages, is have more than one copy of things.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing that we do is we have an A4 book, which we use to store visuals, but actually, because it's just got strips of Velcro in an A4 book, you can just use it as a visual timetable itself. So you can carry it around, but also on all the other pages, you can just store all the visuals. So you've got them there with you, and you can keep it in front of you to move around, like you say.
Okay. And I'd be interested, just we've got sort of 1 or 2 seconds. I've noticed on your visual aids, if people are making their own, you've used a non-shiny a sort of cover on them, haven't you? And that's really important for people with dementia, so that there's not a shine back.
Exactly. Anybody who's got sensory issues might really struggle with the glare. So be careful when you're buying laminate, because laminating these visuals is brilliant, but if you get a gloss laminate, it's going to have that glare, light's going to reflect off it, and that might not work for some people. So go for matte laminate if you can. Okay, thanks, Gina. So I'm going to start to wrap up. Thank you. It's been brilliant you having us with you. I'm hoping everyone can join us well, we've actually got a session on the 20th of October, which is a live online session, and that's looking at planning, reasoning and problem solving, which this really feeds into quite well. We've got another Facebook Live next week. It's National Poetry Day, and seemingly we have Rebecca Fuller, who plays Beth Casey in The Archers, and she's written a poem which she's devoted to her granddad. So if you can, get a drink,
pull up a sofa or a chair. The sofa, don't pull up a sofa, pull up a chair and join us for another luncheon night, luncheon listen next week. And that's with Rebecca Fuller. And thank you for joining us today. However much I've got my words twisted up, I'm hoping it's been of use to people. Thank you so much.
Me too.
Thank you, Gina.
Thanks, bye.